Hi, welcome today to episode 44, Celebrity Customer Experience Riffs with me, Jill Raff. We riff on anything and everything from employee experience to customer experience because I'm truly obsessed with the idea that great employee experience will lead to great customer experience. So, why celebrity customer experience in particular? Because I feel that every customer deserves to be treated and have the same pampering treatment as a celebrity. And why not, right? All of our dollars are the same. I also believe that your revenue will be increased by engaging committed and loyal employees and customers. That's why my proprietary process actually is called the inside out framework, because it starts in the inside with your employee experience. So I'm really excited today to share with you and bring you our guest who comes from a lot of that experience and really can talk about how leadership, it starts with ourselves and what we're doing. So I just want to remind anyone who's sharing this time with us today to please join in and comment. When you comment, we will see your comments, and then we can answer and engage directly. So without further ado, I bring in our guest, Scott Stansfield. Scott, you're with us. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Such a pleasure to be here and be on your show. Yeah, I have so much gratitude for being a guest on anybody's show, and and so I just want to say thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, I had the pleasure of being on your show recently. So it's nice now to reciprocate and have you be on my show and have others in my world learn of the great work that you're doing and your experiences. So thank you so much.
Yep.
So Scott is known as the Modern Longevitarian, also has a podcast by that same name. So be sure to check that out on Spotify. Scott's a husband and father of two living in Park City, Utah. And for over 25 years, Scott has built award-winning teams and focused on solving the puzzle of living the healthiest life possible. Scott is inspired each day by both of his parents, who are cancer survivors, by losing 40 pounds twice. Scott has developed great knowledge of in-body transformation, health span, and lifespan. And Scott comes from the restaurant industry, so we all understand how stressful that is. So the two of these certainly are very important to integrate together. So Scott, thank you for coming to speak to us about all of that. I'd love to start really just with the beginning, a little bit about your background, what got you involved in the restaurant industry.
Well, I used to travel a lot in my late teens, late teens and into 20, racing go-karts. Believe it or not, I raced against guys that ended up making it in NASCAR. If you're a NASCAR fan, you may have heard of some. I'm 48, turning 49. So Jason Keller is from South Carolina as well. Elliott Sadler from Virginia. We used to race at a mutual track in North Carolina. Shane Hall, Lyndon Amick, some guys like that I raced against, or like Rodney Childers, who's a crew chief, right? And there's fabricators and stuff. They all kind of made it, we kind of moved into NASCAR. My teammate, Michael Herman Jr., his dad actually worked for Dale Earnhardt back in the day, right? And they're from Kannapolis, North Carolina. And Michael Herman Jr. actually is the head spotter for Rouse Racing now and has won some big races spotting for and coaching some young drivers coming up. So what happened was I told myself for the last couple of years I was racing, if I don't make it as a NASCAR driver, I want to own a restaurant. I don't know where it came from. Never worked in a restaurant, never did any of those things. And
interesting juxtaposition, right? Like
right.
Racing and restaurant, they don't naturally go together.
They don't, but for me, they're almost identical in a lot of ways. And I can explain that if you want to know that.
Sure.
But basically we had won a race. I was racing with Jack Camp and the Camp family. They owned a plumbing company, and they sponsored me the last 18 months that I raced. And we were coming back from a race in Georgia, driving back to South Carolina. And Jack asked me, he said, "What are you going to do with your life?" And I was like, "I'm going to race." And he's like, "Well, you can't make a living racing go-karts." And you couldn't back then unless you manufactured your own chassis or built engines. And I didn't do either one of those, right? I'd worked for a company that done that for 6 years, working in manufacturing, engine department, all that stuff. And so I was a fabricator by nature, and that's really helped out as a restaurant manager, being able to like fix things, right? Instead of having to call call somebody to come fix something, I'm like mentally like I need to fix something, fix it, and I can, right, and do that. But so a month later, we raced one more time or two more times. I quit. Next thing you know, I'm enrolled in University of South Carolina. I'm a physical education and athletic training double major, and I needed to get a job, and I was like, well, restaurants. A guy named Kenny Puckett that I was in school with helped me get a job at what was called Dockside. Well, it was called Dockside for years, but out on Lake Murray, and it's now Irmo, South Carolina, about 30 minutes from downtown, and got a job as a dishwasher, and was washing dishes. Best dressed dishwasher they ever hired at that point, right? Had my Tabasco tie. My only tie was a Tabasco tie. My khakis, a white shirt, and next thing you know, and I peeled 50 pounds of shrimp my first night there with a fork, right? That was my first thing I ever did, right? It was a casual seafood restaurant, had a galvanized bucket in the middle, a hole in the table, and, where, like had shellfish platters and stuff. And so Dale Augenstein and took a chance on me, and, 90 days later offered me a management job, and I dropped out of college and I went from dishwasher to manager in 90 days. Right.
You know what? I love it.
Yep.
That shows the possibility, because he obviously saw your work ethic, your capabilities, your focus, and all the skills you had learned before. So it shows you too that everybody's position is really important. There's not any one person that's necessarily better or higher than the other. They all participate, but the opportunities that could come about if you work your job, whatever you're doing, starting even if it's the dishwasher, doing it full on, right, shows the opportunities,
right? And then when you got to, they're like, well, hey, you've been good at washing dishes, let's go cut some potatoes, right, and cut some vegetables and those things. Yeah. And when and so I'd worked as a fabricator, so I knew how to kind of like, once I like got into it, like, a great prep cook is going to know, like, hey, I put this on the stove first, right? Because then while that water's heating up to boil, I can cut this or do this. And they're stacking things together. And I was able to really kind of, build a prep list and do those type of things. Right. And then next thing you know, I'm expediting and that type of stuff. So that's really the background. And so I worked casual seafood restaurant. I worked for that company in multiple positions over 5 years in multiple locations. And I still chat with Dale. He has the Steamer Seafood Company on Hilton Head Island. And, we just, on Facebook, we're chatting about, something, I reposted something from a year ago. And we were chatting about that. So about once a month, I still talk to Dale. So
that's cool. That's fun. Yeah. It is about relationships after all, right? So when you create those relationships, and I think especially in the hospitality world, that's just they come from a relationship place, that those relationships last forever. So that's really
right.
Neat. So you worked your way up to restaurant leadership. Mm-hmm. And let's talk a little bit about, all the things that are involved with that, between hiring and training and, just, we'll go from there to just talking about the speed and the agility and all the things are really needed and attributes that are necessary to succeed in this industry. So tell us a little bit about how you started out and where you went with that in your leadership.
Well, I started out all wrong, right? I was like militant and, just like I said, do it, you should do it, and made all the wrong mistakes, or it made every mistake possible, right?
Old school.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know any different, right? I never had managed anybody really. It was, and being at the racetrack, it's just very like, okay, Scott, what do you think we need to do? We need, take this tire off, change this gear, do this. And it was just like this. And I would just say it and then, right. And it would just get done. Right. It was no, like you didn't have to make anybody feel safe. You didn't have to, my team was my team. I didn't hire anybody. Right. That type of stuff. Right. So, so it was all wrong, right? I mean, you can sum it up into this one sentence: manage things, lead people, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so, and I think that's actually trademarked by the Stephen Covey's organization. So we got to be careful about, using it or not giving them credit, right?
Credit, yeah.
Yeah. But here's the thing, right? You got a USDA prime grade New York strip, 16 ounce, right? You're going to manage that. You're going to order it from the company in the case. You're going to check the date that it was. You're going to see what the aging is on it. You're going to store it properly. You're going to have FIFO, right? You're going to manage this thing, right? You're going to pull it out of the package if it's pre-cut. You're going to season it before you put it in an 1800-degree broiler. You're going to cook it to the temperature that the guest ordered it from. Your food runner is going to deliver it. Your server is going to do a 2-minute 2-minute check back to see how they like it, make sure it's cooked the right way, right? Everything's going great. They didn't finish it because they're saving room for this cheesecake that you made from scratch, right? You box it up, you bring it back in a bag, right? Do all those things. They take it home, right? You manage that every step of the process of that New York strip. You can't lead that New York strip to excellence, right? You can manage it to excellence, but you don't do that to your people. Your people need to be led, right? Because people don't wake up in the morning and go, I want to be managed. They wake up, I want to be led. I want to be inspired. I want those type of things. And so it really, it boils down to people, and then also, all these other things, the training, and then the environment, right? So it's a long story short. When I raced go-karts, we had 40 sets of mounted tires when we raced dirt, and I won a national dirt championship in a class called limited modified heavy. 40 sets of tires. So 40 times 4, you do the math on each one of those. There's a lot of money invested in that, and different track conditions required for different sets of tires to be able to be optimal. Well, your people are a super important piece of that, because it's like you have different players inside your organization. Some may be a best prep cook, maybe a best line cook, a hostess, which, or a host, which is amazing, right? Other supervisors, beverage managers, things like that. And in different conditions, you need different type of people to do that. So there's a correlation to that for me. And if I was going to win races, I needed the best tires. And so if I'm going to win in restaurants, I need the best people, right? I also need to train them because there's a saying that's from 600 BC from this Greek poet and soldier. I'm not going to try to say the name because I probably would slay it, right? I don't speak Greek, but it says, we do not rise to our expectations. We fall to the level of our training. Okay. And so what happens is the expectations of our guests, the expectations of the ownership or management is high. All of those extremely high in these days. The expectations for people for their own paychecks, right? Their own personal integrity is high. Right? Those things. So it's our responsibility as leaders to train everybody to above the expectations that is out there on all levels. So when the shift hits the fan and stress comes upon them, right, they fall to the level of their training, which is above what's expected by all parties. Right. So that's where it is. Right.
I love that. And you're right. You have to have the right it's like the hiring the right people. You have to have the right elements, the right pieces to then do something with. And I agree 100%. And I love the idea of the training, because we do fall back to that, because that is it should become second nature to you. And I just want to inject one thing that I feel is very important. That's a part of my process from my Inside Out framework, is that before we train our people, we first need to educate them. And that even ties back with your hiring. You have to educate them on who you are. What are your company core values? What are your expectations from them? What are the behaviors you expect from them? What is the mutual agreement between you? And that when they have this education before they even start the training, you might actually save yourself a lot of time and money as a business owner to find out, is this person someone that's in alignment with our character and our core values? Because if not, you can save yourself all that time and money on training them, because they might not be the best fit for your company. And so once you educate them, you know that they're in alignment and that they're going to be representing you and your culture the way you want it to be and be a part of that work family. Then you train them to be able to deliver to excel at what they do in their responsibilities and how they overlap one another. And I think it's really important, because both of those things then really become second nature. And so that happens so automatically because they're in alignment with each other. And I think that's really key. And I love the idea that, once we've educated and once we've trained people, that the two really are integrated, and it will just be a natural flow, which would represent your culture.
Absolutely. I think that by far one of the most important things is the education piece. And you're right, that starts in the interview process, right? And selecting the people that fit your particular coaching style, right? Because, there may be, okay, Geo Raff is, you got the McDonald's in the back, your dad hired certain types of people, right? He intuitively knew the type of people that would work with him. There was no such thing as hospitality factor and emotional quotient and, hiring for unselfishness and those type of things, right? Really back in the 50s and the 60s, right? It was just, some people just have a good, natural street smarts and can pick that up on people. I had to develop a process, right, for that, because I wasn't able to tease those things out until I found the right questions that gave me the right answers. And so I have probably, I haven't really worked in a restaurant in the last 11 months, but I have, it was 13 years ago that I went through a behavioral based training interviewing at the Hilton Corporation when I worked for them. And that started the process of me asking questions that were looking at behaviors of people, right? And so if you want a team to have a certain culture and certain behaviors, you've got to add those pieces on an individual level so it actually can build it on the collective level, right? Yeah. So if you want a highly intelligent, emotionally intelligent, team that really focuses on being unselfish and putting the guest first, you've got to hire the individual that is that way. Because you can't hire that high price free agent that always wants the ball and always wants to make the most money and always wants the most shifts and always wants the most covers and expect them to all of a sudden turn into an unselfish giving person that cares about everybody else.
Yeah,
right?
You have to know what you're getting from the beginning. Interesting, just exactly on this point. Yesterday, I heard Alex, oh goodness, I forgot his last name with the C. He's the current CEO of Zappos right now. And he was speaking right now, there's a digital CX summit going on. And he was the keynote that started it off yesterday. And he was saying exactly what you're saying, that the culture's there. And someone asked about, how do you continue that now with what's going on with COVID? And he said something very poignant. And that is, we already had established this value as a part of our culture. And so when COVID hit, yes, we had to make a little bit more effort, but we were already in touch with our people. We knew what they thought, what they felt. We asked them, and they played a video, and you could hear their own staff saying, the most important thing here isn't what we sell. It isn't what we do every day. It's the people who come into our business, which is coming into our environment. Each one person can have a powerful impact and influence the overall energy of what happens there. And so it's very important to think, oh, it's just one employee or it's just one customer. No, it's not just one. It's never just one. You have to think of how that one is so powerful and how they influence whether you're going to have a culture of excellence and collaboration, or whether you're going to have a culture of, it's not my job, I take care of what I have to do, you take care of what you have to do. And really, really important to create that unity, that cohesiveness, so that people work together. And it's why one of the reasons in the work that I do, that I also suggest that people do assessments like what you're talking about, both behavioral preferences and personality preferences. So what comes naturally to them, because people are going to have the most energy and ease of doing what comes natural to them. So don't have someone who's maybe who's not a very people-oriented person, who's not real talkative. Don't have them at your front desk. Don't have them as your host. That's not who you want to represent you, right? Like, so have them maybe doing something back of house where they're going to be more comfortable and their skills are going to be highlighted in that way. So,
right. It's the same way as like a football team, right? If somebody's built like a linebacker, put them at linebacker, right? You don't put them, right? You don't put them as the halfback, right? Because they're not going to be as agile and small and slippery and as fast to be able to make that breakaway speed to score the touchdown or, things like that. A fullback is built like a fullback. A fullback plows through on the last yard to score the touchdown, right?
Yeah, you want to play into people's strengths.
Right. And a Tom Brady's a Tom Brady, right? I mean, that's just, we can talk about how his diet is 80% plant-based, and that's correlated with the Blue Zones with a 90% plant-based diet, and why at 43 he can win Super Bowls and crush it, right? But he also has like this super, super mindset around, all those things,
Mm.
right? So that stuff.
Mindset's huge.
Yeah.
So that's a great segue. So let's talk a little bit about your path to the modern longevitarian focus and why that name. And I'm going to throw out one more thing. Just, on your bio, you talk about being a sleep optimization author.
Right.
God knows sleep is so critical. So kind of give us a wrap on all that, please.
All right. I'll give you that as short as I possibly can. 9 years ago, I was 40 years old, turning 40. I turned 40 in March. And so December 9 years ago, so just a couple months ago, I went for a well checkup, and I've been a vegetarian for 10 years. And my parents had, my dad had cancer 10 years prior to that, right? And my mom had cancer about 7 years prior to that. Both of them had to have surgery. My dad had to have chemo. They were 55 years old. And the reason my mom's a couple years younger than dad, right? So that's why it was a couple years in that. And I happened to be living, in St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands, food and beverage director of the 7th largest oil refinery in the world. And my dad's 3 best friends got cancer. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm genetically coded to get cancer, but yet his friends at the same age are getting cancer. What's the common piece of the puzzle here? And food was. Right. And so they had all been in the military because of Vietnam era, things like that. They're all blue collar working around toxins and that type of stuff. Right. So basically I boiled it down to like, I can control what I put in and on my body. Right. So I changed my diet. I married a New Yorker. She's been a pescatarian for 20 years at the time. So I started mimicking what she was eating. 9 years later, I go to the doctor. 8 years later, go to the doctor, and I'm 40 pounds overweight. I'm a fat vegetarian. My blood pressure has gone down, but I'm like, and I'd lost and so I had lost the weight 5 years prior to that at 35 doing P90X. So I just beat it to death by working out 9 hours a week. And I was overweight, fat vegetarian, right? At 40 years old. And it sucked. It totally sucked. And, I started doing P90X again. It was so hard. I was commuting. I was the director of food and beverage at a hospital in Salt Lake City, Utah. And I'd lost about 10 pounds over the first month, which is pretty good, right? But I was killing myself at 40 trying to do all this stuff. And one of the marketing people, his name's Matt Shannon. He was a marketing person for the doctors who did lap band surgeries, like gastric bypass surgeries, stapling stomach shut, things like that. He said he heard Dr. Belknap say that weight loss was 70% diet. And all I did was change my exercise. And somebody gifted me a book called The Warrior Diet. And it basically was one of the very first books about intermittent fasting. And so that next week I read that book, I think it's page 52, just like, here's the short, like one sheet on page 52. I did that for a week. I fasted for under ate for 20 hours. I didn't change what I ate. I changed when I ate. I lost 10 pounds the month prior. I lost 7 pounds in 7 days.
Wow.
Right. I have been intermittent fasting since that week for 9 years. Right. I had breakfast the other day, my son's birthday on February 6th. We had some organic, non-GMO bacon and pasture-raised eggs and things like that. But that was like one of the 10 breakfasts that I eat all year long. Right. Father's Day, when my family cooks for me, birthdays, special celebrations.
So is it that that you don't eat breakfast because you're doing, I've read that it's good to do 12, 14, even better if possible, to fast between meals, right? Overnight. So before you eat again, 12 to 14 hours should pass before you actually eat the next meal the next day.
Right. Well, there's two things, right? It's based off we talk about the sleep. It's really what meal you skip is based off in my opinion, based off your sleep circadian clock, your own natural rhythms. If you're a morning person and you wake up hungry, eat. Okay. But you're most likely not going to be hungry if you're a morning person at night. So skip dinner, right? So eat about 2 o'clock and then don't eat the dinner. So basically listen to your body. I never wanted to eat breakfast in my life, but we were brainwashed that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Right. So basically by reading that book, it was like my Roger Bannister breaking the 4-minute mile saying, I give you permission to go out and do and accomplish this as possible. Right. So when I'm told that I'm not going to die if, I'm not going to, die if I skip a meal. Okay. It gave me permission to go, oh, wait a minute. I'm not hungry for breakfast. So just don't eat breakfast. Right. So this morning, right now, Yeah, eat when you're hungry, right? So right now it's 11:26 my time. I've had 1 cup of black coffee and water, right? And so I'm not planning. And I I ate a bit later last night than I normally do. So I'm planning on not eating until I normally eat at 2 o'clock. I'm planning on pushing it till at least 4, maybe even 6 o'clock before I just have one meal today, right? And that's based off what I did yesterday, right? With those type of things. So anyway. I was in the middle of a workout, 9 years ago, in the middle of a workout, in the morning doing push-ups. I remember like standing up and I went, I'm not a vegetarian, right? I'm a longevitarian. Because I started putting over the years, you think I'd put together, since my dad had cancer, that you're right, how important it was the air that I breathe, how important it was the food that I eat and organic food. And it wasn't, so it wasn't just about, being, my diet, it was like, I need to exercise and I need to meditate. And, I started putting these pieces together and it was the beginning pieces of this 8-pillar system that I have now, by living life as a modern longevitarian. So I rushed over to the computer. I don't even think I had a smartphone. This was so early, right? And I went to GoDaddy.com and I searched longevitarian.com as best as I could to figure out how to spell it, right? Yeah, it was already taken. And I was like, wait a minute, I didn't come up with this word like I thought I had. And that forwarded you to a website that went to talk about people who live in blue zones, right? And then I Googled longevitarian, to find the longevitarian.com and that stuff. And it was in a book in the 1860s referring to people over 100 years old. And I was like, wow, this is super, super cool. And there wasn't even we didn't even use the word health span back then. So I described it that, a modern longevitarian. And I bought Modern Longevitarian in that moment, right? Because I'm like, so we live in a world that's different. We have Roundup and glyphosate and all that stuff, right? So we have all those things, right?
Yeah.
And so basically I just said, Modern Longevitarian, and I owned the website for 8.5 years before I ever put a website to it or did anything. And that happened after I got furloughed from my restaurant GM job in Santa Monica. So
yeah, COVID's definitely influenced a lot of people to transition and to transform what they did before. And hearing what you're talking about, I mean, it's the same kind of thing. You can't take one thing, what you eat or how you sleep or how you exercise. You just like we were talking about previously with the business, right? You can't isolate one person and one piece. Everything has to work together. We're starting to run short on time because I've decided to really try to hone these in to about 30 minutes to keep people's interest and keep their be able to give them some great tips. So I want to just try to touch on a couple, just a quick thing. So we talked about sleep and about the key activities. So I think everyone's really understood that you've given them a lot of things to think about and how to balance all of those things in our lives. And I know that you have something coming up that you're working on, a planner or journal, the Modern Longevitarian Jammer, which, puts everything in one and really helps you focus on living your best day today so that you can live your best for years to come. How is that different from other planners and things that are out there now?
Well, here's one of the pages, right? This is a weekly page, that you would plan this out, right? And so basically there's the 8 pillars are mindset, breath, hydration, sleep, fuel, which is food, movement, and the hot and cold, or getting uncomfortable, and then connecting with Mother Nature, like physically touching the earth and getting the negative ions with earthing. And so basically you can track those type of things, like how long did I fast? How much water did I drink today? Did I move today? Did I exercise today? Did I have a growth mindset? How was my EQ score? Right. So you can track those things, right? Starting the day with gratitude, right? Which is super important. The science behind gratitude is amazing, right? What would I love today? What can I build momentum on today? Right. What went great yesterday? What were my wins from yesterday? So it's really about, putting all of the things that it takes to, like your morning routine, right? Your evening routine, right? I know that most of you may have just found out about Miracle Mornings by Hal Elrod, and you're like, now I got to have an evening routine, right? And that's what my sleep book's about, right? So you can go to my website, sleep.strongforlonger.com, and download my book I wrote for you on sleep. It's going to either help you fall asleep because you're going to develop this really cool eating routine, or it's going to bore you to death and you'll fall asleep anyway. So it's going to help one way or the other, right? And so to make it quick, the jammer is something that I'm working on, and it's probably going to be rolled out initially with my one-on-one clients and do that and really kind of dial it in. But basically it's breaking down each one of these, giving you about 500 words on each one of the pillars, right? Mm-hmm. And quotes that back that up from experts and things like that. Even have a quote from Tony Stark, right? I am Iron Man, right in there, right? And then there is, and then it has like, it's broken down in this 100-day longevity primer where you're really kind of over 100 days going to break down into 3 28-day phases and then have a 14-day victory lap type thing, right? So mm-hmm. The first 28 days, you're really going to, like, if sleep is your weakest one, you're really going to focus on sleep in those 28 days to change the habits that you have around that. Then the next 28 days, you're going to continue the first one, like sleep, and then you're going to add in, I may decide to go, I want to go from, I sleep for 8 hours, and so that means I intermittent fast for 8 hours and 1 minute, right? You're going to work up to where you're going to intermittent fast to 16 hours at a minimum, right? Maybe, or 24 hours a couple times a week, right? You'll change your fasting. Then you'll stack the third phase. You'll stack on, it may be like, I need to get out of my comfort zone. Meaning that I need to get a little hot, maybe in a sauna, take a hot bath or hot shower, or take a cold shower. And you're changing the environment in which your body is to get this positive stress, this hormesis effect, where you stimulate your body to build its immune system or convert white fat into brown fat, that type of stuff, right? And so you're doing those type of things, and you would stack those things that way in that. And so that's what the jammer is, and it's something that, as I was furloughed, I was like, how am I going to keep up with all these things, right? And I started creating like opening checklists, right? A morning routine, right? You can create your own, talking about lead yourself first, right? When you create an opening checklist for a restaurant, that you check all these boxes, like we polish the silverware, this is rolled, the glasses are set up, we got ice in the bins, we got all those things. Well, I did my breathing exercises, I did my meditation, I took my cold shower, I drank my 1 liter of water within the first minute of waking up, right? I did all these things, right? And so you can create your own opening and closing checklist so you can keep track of your own personal health and lead yourself first, right? That's really what you can do.
Well, that is a great way to close the loop. I was just going to say that we decided to title this show is Start with Leading Yourself. And it's a perfect example how if we aren't solid with who we are, we can't be present and solid for others. That we have to take care of ourselves. When I became a mother, I heard this a lot, right? Like suddenly, instantly, in a moment from when that birth happens, your life is no longer your own. Literally, your life is no longer your own. And so, I'm just one who gives and takes care of and does all these things. And so I always heard, if you don't take care of yourself first, you're not going to be there. You're not going to be capable of taking care of others. And so perfect example of all your tips and ideas and ways and of how to start by leading with yourself, because you certainly will not be able to be a leader. You won't even be able to be present as a teammate as a part of it, much less a leader, if you don't start with yourself. So you've given everybody a lot of great ideas, a lot of good tips, and I'm sure we're all going to look forward to come back when you have your jammer open and ready to go. Come back to this, because it will be recorded, so everyone can come back and listen to this again for those tips. But put in your I put your email address, your website up on the screen.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But come back to this and put a comment in with your link to your jammer, and I'm sure everyone will be able to benefit from that. That sounds like a really exciting new innovation and product to market to help us coordinate and help us be able to lead with ourselves first. So
right. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining today. I really, really appreciate it. A lot of great, you can tell, a lot of passion, a lot of excitement, and a great example of how you parlay and use skills from one industry, from one part of your personality, and how they tie over into another. I mean, I think really great. My life has been an example of that, and certainly yours as well.
Absolutely.
And a really great example of that.
Yep.
So if you don't mind, hang on with us for a second there in the back. I'm going to just let everyone know about what's up next week. And we will be back. Thank you Scott for joining today. Really appreciate it. And we look forward to probably circling back. There's a lot more. There's always more to talk about with you. So I really enjoy it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
So next week, next Thursday. So as you know now, Thursdays are always my show with a guest. And Tuesdays at 10 a.m. Central is always a quick 10 to 15 minutes max experience wins, where we riff about stories, experiences that have happened to us, quick wins, takeaways that can help you with your employee experience or a customer experience, often from the side from being a customer, what happens to me, or as the employee side, how do we deliver that great experience so that we can ensure a great customer experience. So next Thursday, James Dodkins, the United Kingdom's #1 CX influencer, will be with me. James is awesome. He's known as the CX rock star because he literally is a rock star, a performer in a band, an amazing guitarist, an amazing keynote speaker. So I really encourage you to join us next Thursday, always same time, 12 noon. And it should be also a very interesting conversation there. We're working on a collaboration. So join us definitely. And before we go off, Francoise, thank you. Francoise, so nice to hear from you. Thank you for this inspiring presentation. Well, I was so glad that you were able to join us. I miss you, and it's great to hear from you. So thanks for joining in on the conversation with Scott. So I'm just going to wrap it up today and say thank you for joining us, and be sure to join in again next Tuesday or Thursday with a guest. And until then, take care and hope you have great connections.